When children are born, we dream that they will always stay close. When grandchildren arrive, that dream becomes even stronger. We want to be that person they can always run to for advice, for support, for a kind word. But life is such that, over the years, the distance between generations subtly grows. One clumsy word, and the bridges built over years can crack. One phrase, spoken without malice, and suddenly a grandchild closes up, withdraws into their own life, where there's hardly any room for you. And the most bitter part of this is that we often don't even notice how it begins. We meant well, we wanted to teach, to warn, to support, but what happened was that we inadvertently devalued, pushed away, hurt. Today we're going to talk about 5 phrases that seem harmless, but can subtly erode trust. I'll explain why you should avoid these words if you want to maintain not only your grandchildren's respect, but also their open hearts. Because respect isn't fear, it's not duty, it's not habit. It's always about love. And that love can be preserved if you know how to listen, how to speak, and how to feel. Years had passed, but Eleanor still remembered how, as a child, her grandmother would sigh heavily, looking at her new jeans, at her music, at the books Eleanor loved so much. Her grandmother often said the same phrase, "Things were better in my day." And every time those words were spoken, something inside Eleanor would quietly shrink. It felt like her world, her dreams, her joys, all of it was worthless. As if she was somehow making a mistake in life itself. Now, having become a grandmother herself, Eleanor understood how easily that phrase rolls off the tongue, and how hard it is to then build a bridge back, to respect, to trust, to that easy desire to share one's world, which disappears almost imperceptibly. When we say to our grandchildren, "Things were better in my day," we're not just comparing eras. We are, without even realizing it, putting a stamp on their present. Their favorite movies seem empty to us, their fashion, strange, their dreams, laughable. We're as if inadvertently communicating, your world is worse, you're living wrong. And who wants to be drawn to someone who constantly says that everything around is ruined? Who wants to share their joys if their world is considered second-rate? Eleanor remembered her old friend Harold. Harold was an old-school guy, strict manners, a love of jazz, books with yellowed pages. But he had one amazing quality. He never allowed himself to put down the new. He could listen to the electronic music that his grandson played, genuinely wincing at the volume, but he would still ask, "What do you like about it? What do you hear in it?" And that simple interest worked wonders. The grandson, who had initially been ashamed of his hobbies, began to talk, to share, to explain. Trust arose between them. Harold didn't become a fan of the new styles, but he became a friend who his grandson wanted to come back to. This is exactly what we often lose when we grab onto the phrase, "things were better before." We not only close ourselves off from new experiences, we close the door on those who want to come to us. Think about it. When was the last time you sincerely asked your grandchild about what interests them? Not to evaluate, not to express your opinion, but simply to understand. When was the last time you looked at their world not through the glasses of the past, but with the open eyes of someone who cares about what another person feels and experiences? The world has changed. Yes, that's true. But respect and love are always valued. They don't depend on how many screens are on a phone or how short a skirt is. They depend on the willingness to listen without judgment. And here's a little secret. Grandchildren don't need us to be just like them. They need us to be there with them. That we aren't ashamed of our past, and that we don't devalue their present. And if it seems to you that time is running out, that you can't understand this generation, that the bridges are falling apart, remember, a bridge can always be rebuilt. It starts with one question, with one kind look, with one acceptance without trying to remake. In the next part, we'll talk about another phrase, even more insidious, about those words that sound almost innocent, but make grandchildren feel small and stupid. And most importantly, we'll discuss how you can maintain respect, even when you want to instruct, to teach, and to warn. Believe me, it's not only possible to do this, it's surprisingly pleasant. And maybe, at some point, you yourself will hear in response, "Thank you for listening to me. You understand better than anyone." If you feel that this topic resonates with you, that these stories echo in your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Here we talk about the things that remain important at any age, about closeness, about trust, about true respect. Ruby always believed that love was the most important thing. At 18, her feelings were bright, full of hope, like the first sunny days after a long winter. She met Griffin at a small coffee shop on the corner. He was a dreamer, played the guitar, wrote music, talked about travels and dreams so sincerely that it seemed to Ruby that a whole world was opening up before her. One day, overflowing with happiness, she went to see her grandfather. She wanted to share her joy, to show him that her heart had chosen not by chance. At a family dinner, between conversations about the weather and the news, she began to talk about Griffin, about his plans to open a music store, about how they dreamed of living near a lake, getting a dog, and reading books on the porch on long summer evenings. Her grandfather was silent for a long time. He looked at her, squinting slightly like a person who knows in advance what will happen next, and still hopes for a miracle. Finally, he sighed heavily, put his fork on his plate, and said, "You think you understand everything about life now, but once you've lived as long as I have, you'll see everything differently. Do you think I want to destroy your dream? No, Ruby. It's just that I see. This Griffin of yours is a guy without a foundation under his feet. Today he plays the guitar. Tomorrow, he's sorting boxes in a supermarket. How long do you think love will last when the rent money runs out? Are you going to pay for his dreams? Are you going to carry the whole house on your back? And then sit in a small apartment, dreaming of getting out on vacation at least once?" Ruby listened without interrupting, and something inside her grew cold, not because her grandfather was lying, but because he didn't see the most important thing, her feelings. He didn't ask why Griffin was dear to her. He didn't want to hear that for her. Faith, which they gave each other, was more important than money, than temporary difficulties. When we say phrases like, "You don't know anything about life yet," we not only make it clear that we have more experience. We are as if saying, your feelings have no weight. Everything you're experiencing now is an illusion, a mistake. And at that moment, even if the young person outwardly nods, a wall is born in their heart, a wall of silent distrust. Pain at 18 is real pain. Love at 18 is real love. And to destroy it just because life will show means forgetting that we too once had a heart that believed in the impossible. Sometimes wisdom isn't the ability to predict someone else's mistakes. Sometimes wisdom is the ability to support, even knowing that the road will be difficult. The ability to stand by, not saying, "I told you so," if things don't work out as dreamed. And if it seems to you that your grandchildren are living unwisely, falling in love with the wrong people, making plans in the clouds, don't rush to cut off their flight with words about real life. Sometimes it's enough just to be there when they themselves want to come back down to earth. And then they will return not lonely, but with gratitude to those who did not deprive them of faith in themselves. In the next part, we'll talk about another common phrase, about why the words, "when you have your own children, then you'll understand," don't teach compassion, but only reinforce the division between generations. And about how you can pass on your experience so that it becomes a support and not a heavy burden. Sometimes the most difficult conversations happen when it seems that both sides want the same thing, to protect, to help, to safeguard. And yet it is at such moments that a chasm arises between elders and grandchildren, filled with misunderstanding and resentment. One of the phrases that particularly easily builds this invisible wall sounds almost commonplace. "When you have your own children, then you'll understand." Rose always worried about Sophia. In her eyes, her granddaughter was still a child, even though she was an adult on paper. Sophia dreamed of traveling, of working in another country, of a life of her own, far from the quiet life of the family. She dreamed boldly and loudly, as only those who haven't been burned can dream. And Rose, sitting opposite her, with a mug of cooled tea in her hands, listened to her stories and felt a wave of anxiety rising in her chest. At some point, she couldn't stand it and said, "When you have your own children, then you'll understand what fear is. Then you'll know what it's like to think about someone else, not yourself, at night. Then you'll understand why we try to keep you close." She spoke sincerely from the bottom of her heart, from that very love that overflows the heart when you place not only hopes, but also anxieties, on another person. But Sophia heard something completely different. She heard that her dreams were childish, her desires frivolous, her aspirations empty. She heard that she had not yet earned the right to be independent until she had passed through the path of pain and care that was only prophesied to her so far. And no matter how right Rose was in her worries, at that moment a coldness stood between them, a coldness of misunderstanding, because when young people are told, "You'll understand later," they are not comforted, they are devalued. They are put on the bench of waiting, which no one wants to sit on. In reality, every person deserves respect here and now, and not when they become older, wiser, or more convenient. Dreams are important as soon as they are born. Fears are real as soon as they are first felt. The desire to go your own way deserves respect as soon as that way is only in thoughts. And if you want to protect, want to suggest, want to warn, sometimes it's much more important not to say, "You'll understand when it's too late," but "I'm there with you now. I believe in you, even if I'm scared." If you're enjoying this conversation, if you're finding something for yourself here, please like this video. It's a simple way of saying, it's important to me to maintain warmth and respect between generations. And for us, it's a sign that we're heading in the right direction. Because respect doesn't grow from expectations, doesn't bloom on the soil of fear, and isn't built on lessons of pain. It arises where there is acceptance, where, alongside the dream, they are given the opportunity to go their own way. Even if that way looks frightening, but sometimes striving to warn, to protect, to shield from mistakes, elders cross that line beyond which care turns into command. And then another phrase comes on the scene, which can imperceptibly destroy the respect of grandchildren. "You have to do it the way I say." At first glance, it seems that there's nothing wrong with this. After all, we know life, we've lived longer, we've seen how easy it is to stumble. Is it bad to guide, to suggest, to insist? But the problem is that the ultimatum tone deprives grandchildren of the most important thing, a sense of their own worth, their freedom of choice. Thomas, the grandson of one of my good acquaintances, always dreamed of becoming an actor as a child. As he got a little older, he became fascinated with the theater studio, rehearsed monologues at home in front of the mirror, signed up for school plays. But as soon as he mentioned his dream seriously, his grandfather immediately showered him with his harsh truth. "You should go to college to become an engineer, a real profession, a stable life. Theater is nonsense for loafers." And the tone in which this was said left no choice. There was no question in it, no discussion, only a verdict that had to be accepted in silence. Thomas didn't argue. He smiled, nodded, continued to study, went to technical college, and in his spare time, he continued to secretly write plays that no one read. Only many years later did he admit to himself that something important inside him fell silent from that very conversation. The desire to share, to discuss, to reveal his dreams to adults was gone forever. When we say, "You have to do it the way I say," we are as if putting our love in a condition. You will only get my approval when you submit to my experience. But respect doesn't live on the land of orders. Respect grows where there is the opportunity to choose, to make a mistake, to return, to ask for advice, and not to receive a verdict. And if you want your grandchildren not to withdraw from you in silence, but to reach out for advice, if you want them to come back to you not out of duty, but out of trust, learn to offer, not to order. Instead of "you have to," you can say, "I would try it this way in your place." But it's up to you. Instead of "you can't do that," you can say, "I had a similar experience. Would you like me to tell you about it?" Grandchildren of any age want to feel their independence. They want to know that their opinion matters, that their mistakes are not a catastrophe, but part of growing up. And when adults give them the right to choose, when an offer sounds instead of an order, then respect for them only grows. Because respect is not built on fear. It is built on freedom. And in the next part, we'll talk about yet another insidious mistake, about phrases that seem casual, that seem to be said without malice, but leave deep wounds, about comparing children to each other, about words like, "What kind of child are you?" and about how to learn to see the value in every person, even when their path is completely unlike ours. Sometimes the deepest resentments are born not from serious conversations, not from big quarrels, but from short, almost casually tossed off phrases. A word spoken in the heat of the moment is sharper than a knife, and it cannot be erased by explanations or time. One of these phrases, which you should definitely think about if you want to maintain the respect of your grandchildren, sounds seemingly innocent. What kind of child are you? Or, who do you take after? Of course, when we say these words, we most often don't plan to hurt. They slip out in moments of irritation, in a fit of resentment, when we want to shake, to reason, to return the grandchild to the right path. Sometimes it's even said with a degree of jest, with a half smile, with a good-natured intonation. But words live longer than moods, and especially long they live in the hearts of those who heard in them not a joke at all, but a sentence. Harry was a boy with a dream. He drew comics, built models of fantastic spaceships out of paper, and dreamed of becoming an illustrator. In his imagination, he lived in a world of the future, full of stars and adventures. And when one day he brought his album to show his grandfather, the grandfather looked at a few pages and said, as if without malice, "What kind of child are you? All normal boys play sports and you're doing this." Harry didn't say anything. He hid the album back in his backpack and never showed his drawings to his grandfather or to any of the adults. He continued to draw, secretly at night, in notebooks that he hid under his bed, as someone hides the most valuable things from a world that isn't ready to understand. When we say such words, even without thinking, we are as if saying, "You are wrong. You are not what I would like you to be." And no excuses. "I was just joking. Don't be offended. I just wanted you to be better." We'll be able to completely erase that first wound later, because at that moment, the child hears, "I am not accepted here. I am not loved here as I am." The hardest thing about such phrases is that they undermine respect imperceptibly, not loudly, not through a scandal, but drop by drop. Today you'll say, "What kind of child are you?" Tomorrow, "Nothing good will come of you." The day after tomorrow, "You're doing everything wrong." And at some point the grandchild, who was opening their heart to you just yesterday, will begin to withdraw, will begin to come less often, will begin to be silent when they want to shout, will begin to seek acceptance in other places, where they won't be remade. But respect isn't about fitting into your expectations. Respect is the ability to see in another not only what is convenient and pleasant for us, but also everything else, their strange dreams, their unexpected thinking, their choices that are unlike ours. It's the ability to be there not only when we are proud, but also when we are puzzled. And if you ever catch yourself wanting to say something like, "Who do you take after?" try asking instead, "Tell me more. I want to understand." Maybe it will really be hard for you to accept what you hear, but the very fact that you wanted to listen will already be a gift that will remain in your grandchild's heart for a long time. Words stay with us, and we ourselves choose which of them will become a burden and which will become wings. And respect, love, trust, all this is also built from words, small, everyday, sometimes careless. But if you invest attention and warmth in them, not just a conversation is built. A road is built along which your grandchildren will want to return to you again and again. When we talk to our grandchildren, when we share with them our experience, our fears, our love, we are actually standing at a crossroads each time. You can choose the road of control, of reproaches, of devaluation. You can remind each time who is older, who is right, who knows life better. Or you can choose another path, the path of trust. A path where, instead of "you don't understand anything," you hear "I'm there with you," where stories sound instead of orders, where interest sounds instead of reproaches. Tell me about yourself. Respect cannot be built on fear. It cannot be torn out with orders or earned with reproaches. Respect is born where a person feels they are seen, they are heard, they are taken seriously, even when they are going down a road that we wouldn't choose ourselves. Every word that we throw between ourselves and our grandchildren becomes either a brick in a bridge or a stone in a wall. And it is in our hands what to build. Every conversation is a chance to become for them someone to whom they want to return, not out of duty, not out of fear, but because it is warm and peaceful near you, and you can be yourself. And the most amazing thing about this is that trust works both ways. The more freedom we give, the closer those we love become. The less we try to remake, the more often we are chosen again and again. Not because we have to, but because they want to. So, let's cherish this delicate thread between generations. Let's remember that, for true respect, You don't have to wait until your grandchildren grow up, have families, or face troubles. One small decision is enough. Today, listen, accept, love. And then there will always be an open road between us and them, a road along which you want to go towards each other. Thank you for being with us. If this story reminded you of something important, if you want to preserve such conversations in your life, subscribe to the channel. There will be many more topics here that help to stay closer to each other, despite the years and distances.